If you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This has been another episode sponsored by Online Horse College. If you haven't had a look at the wide variety of equine-specific accredited courses, then go to onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there. Our guest today is Andrea Riedel-Carrison, or Andrea Riedel-Carrison. She's an internationally qualified coach and a show horse judge who's also got a background in dressage, show jumping and eventing, but we're going to talk to her today about her other specialty area, which is an equine specialist veterinary nurse. How are you today, Andrea?
I'm good, thank you, Glenys. How are you?
Good. Now, Andrea, your favourite quote. What's your favourite quote that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I guess I should mention the person that I learnt the quote from, and that was one of my very early instructors, and that was Graham Parham. He was known as Kanga around most of the South Australian equestrian world, and that quote is, "God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference."
Yeah.
So I think that's really relevant with horses. And interestingly enough, when I was reading Franz Maringer's book, it's on the inside of his book. So I'm not quite sure where. I think Graham knew Franz, so I think it was quite a friendship that developed, and he took that quote on, and I've taken it on again.
Yep. Yeah, so, I've heard the quote before, and I think it's certainly something you can reflect on, isn't it? You're talking about, with horses, particularly with horses. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can tick all the boxes, but sometimes you just, might not be in reality what it was meant to be on paper, and that's the wisdom, isn't it?
Yes.
To make that decision and either go forward with something that you don't think is working for you, or change and get something else.
Yep. Andrea, tell me about an early memory with horses. When did you first start? What was the background? But the actual memory, the day that you remembered this.
Oh, look, the day would have to be... my father was a mounted policeman, and we lived in Adelaide, in Morphettville, and they'd bought me a pony. I was 5, and it was the memory of my father, and I can't exactly give you the day, but it was a regular occurrence that my dad would pedal his push bike around Glenelg, which is quite close to Morphettville.
Yes.
And as a 5-year-old, I would be trotting along next to him, and he would lead me on my pony, and we would trot around all the streets of Glenelg, and quite regularly my pony would cow kick and stick his hoof through the spokes of my dad's back wheel, and my dad would be splattering on the road. And those are the days there was no helmets or anything like that. So that's a really early memory, me gripping onto my little monkey strap on my pony pad and trotting around, Glenelg. It would have been the early hours when the streets were quite quiet, but yeah, that is definitely a very fond memory of my dad and me and what we used to do on the weekends.
Yeah. Did you ever get any photos of that? That would certainly be,
I'm not sure that we've got a photo of Dad pedaling and me trotting along next to him, but there is some very fond memories of that pony. He was very dear to me and lived to quite an old age. And, the Glenelg pageant, when I went as a fairy, because my father had diligently had him broken into harness, and that all sort of fell through when Dad did a practice run and the pony demolished someone's front wall and down the streets of Glenelg, and it was a quick costume change, and I went as a fairy holding my wand, and the pony never got to go in the Glenelg pageant in the cart, but that was my dad. It was hang on for the ride. It was always a little bit of excitement in our house.
Now, from there, because your father had even though he was in the police force, he was in the mounted police force, so his career crossed over into the horse industry too.
Yes.
Were you always going to work in the horse industry, or because you've also been a veterinary nurse and you're equine specialist, was that because you're a vet nurse first and then went equine, or how did it work out?
I was always interested in horses from a very early age. My closest brother, who's 9 years older than me, he was a little interested in the horses, but my parents both rode, but Dad especially was in the mounted police and he had a great affinity with horses, and I actually still have his stock saddle that he rode in the force in. But it was from that interest when I took up veterinary nursing and the opportunity to specialise in the equine studies side of it that I sort of channeled my energies into that from my equestrian background.
Yep. So if someone's going to work with horses and have a career with horses, because as an equine specialist nurse, you would see other people in different areas of the horse industry, and also to knowing your father in the mounted police force, what sort of core skills or character traits does someone need to work in the horse industry?
Look, I think as a vet, it's very difficult if you've never really been exposed to horses or larger animals and you've only done domestic animals to then go into a mixed practice. I think there's quite a bit of confidence in your whole body language, really, more so than a strength issue with horses. I think how you conduct yourself in a very strong, quiet manner without a lot of quick movements and high voice pitch. I think that is the most important thing, especially when you're seeing horses in a stressful environment at the veterinary clinic. They're often having something done that they don't enjoy, needles and x-rays, and they're they're out of their comfort zone. So to be very strong and quiet and manage those horses in stressful environments is certainly something that would be very highly sought as far as an equine nurse or an equestrian vet, for sure.
Yep. Yes, because some vets are vets because of their background and their affinity with dogs and cats and smaller animals, to go on into, as you say, a mixed practice. They might be thinking, well, I'm just going to just do the animals and just work in the surgery, and there's other vets that are going out on call to do the horses and the cattle and everything.
Absolutely.
But sometimes, they might be on emergency that weekend or something, and they may have to come out and manage a horse.
Exactly, and inevitably there's going to be that cut leg or that colic case or foreign body in an eye or something where that vet, who's a perfectly capably qualified vet, but is not terribly comfortable dealing with horses who, they're big and they can be difficult to handle. And many owners, I see it on both sides of the spectrum, terribly disdainful about this poor vet that's trying to deal with this horse that was difficult to handle, and the owners are saying, well, I said to do this and they wanted to do that, and, it is terribly tricky. And I think sometimes having an equine nurse who is involved in the equestrian world just to be a mediator is extremely important, especially in those times of stress. You've got a stressful owner, you've got a nervous vet who's very capable, but doesn't know how to handle this horse, and they often want to give them a lot of sedation, and, the owners don't have an appropriate area to have that horse sedated. So to have an equestrian nurse or an equine nurse with them who they trust to, contain that animal and control it so that they can go ahead and do their job is extremely important for vets.
I was thinking of a vet nurse, but because I'd been a vet nurse and thinking of the skills that I needed and I used. But you're right, working with vets without the experience, you would be a mediator. You would sort of be trying to keep the communication open between the two and get both points of view because you've got the experience with both points and, offer assistance. Yep.
Exactly. And often you're known in the equestrian world, so you're often dealing with friends or people that you know, acquaintances, and I think they were more comfortable knowing that you were there as the person that they could say, I know the vet wants to do this, but I really think this horse is going to be tricky. And you have to read the situation a little bit and tactfully suggest to the vet, yes, I understand that this is what you want to do, but we don't think this horse is going to react in a positive manner if that's what you decide to do. We've had vets try to hobble horses to stitch them up. Well,
yep.
In reality, if a horse has never had hobbles on, it becomes a terribly dangerous situation.
Yep.
So
sure.
it's a really tricky call, and sometimes you never overrule anybody, but you try and get that situation under control, remembering that the animal is your priority,
yes.
but the safety of your clients and your co-workers are also equally as important to get this job done as well as possible.
Yep. What do you think is the best thing about being a veterinary nurse? Equine I shouldn't just say veterinary nurse, an equine specialist veterinary nurse. Yeah.
Well, the equine specialist is wonderful because I get to deal with horses that I absolutely adore. But general vet nursing, I'd have to say it's the animals. And the clients of some of those dear older animals that you see for many years, and it's a bit like those older ponies that you see regularly because they have a foot issue, and it's an ongoing service to them to keep those ponies comfortable in their older age, because often ponies they get laminitic, EMS and founder and Cushing's, and then their dental work. So those ponies that are well loved and have often gone through the family of 3 and 4 children and probably carried them around all at one time or another, double dinking or triple dinking like we all used to do in halters and get dragged off under trees and all those sort of dreadful things that nobody's children would be allowed to do these days. But, tying the pony outside the bakery and pulling the veranda post down and, all those terrible things. And those dear ponies that hold memories for all that family, the care of them is definitely, and to make them most comfortable in their, in their final days or weeks. And I guess to help people make an educated decision on now it's time.
Yes.
That's always a really tough call and awfully heartbreaking for everybody, including the poor vet nurse who's often there to be, holding the box of tissues and the pony. And it's always a really tough decision to know when. And I think if they're comfortable and they're happy and they're not suffering, I think sometimes that early call is a better call than the one where they've just got to the point that you're making the call you have to make. It's always going to be traumatic, though, either way. Of course, in life and death. You have horses, you have live ones, you have dead ones. They seem to manage to put themselves into some extraordinary situations, in fences and trees and, they're very intelligent animals, but sometimes I think, really? Really?
Now, you talked about your father and, him being instrumental in you starting with horses, but what about people who've influenced you in your career? Is there anyone that you'd like to mention there?
Yes, definitely Graham Parham would have to be a huge influence in my teenage years. I know we used to, when we moved from Adelaide to Mount Gambier, a Narracourt, which is only an hour away, we used to do a fortnightly clinic with Graham, and it felt like 2 years, not 2 weeks, I tell you. And, people like Scott Teach and Louise Coulter, who was Louise Wibley, famous South Australians, all did, those 2 weeks. He was a huge, huge influence, and I still can quote him to this day. But I think the other person that really influenced me in my chosen sport of the time would have had to have been Lucinda Pryor-Palmer.
Okay.
Reading her books would have to be the most inspiring stories. The struggle that she went to and then got to the Olympics, it made it, we all have struggles with horses, and to know that someone so famous had has had the same struggles or is having the same struggles at the time was really influential for me.
Yep,
you know,
sure.
that you never give up and you just maybe take the scenic route instead of the direct route with your training, but you still eventually get to the destination.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Wait, can you hear anything? No? That's because we're waiting for someone with a good quality horse product to be advertised here. If that's you, then contact us, horsechats@horsechats.com, and we'll send you the details. Thanks. What about horses? Have you had a horse? You know, you talked about your pony who used to kick out at the bike.
Oh, yes.
Who do you think's been instrumental in helping with your career?
Oh, look, I've had some really, really brilliant horses over the years for lots of different reasons, not always because they were the most successful. Sometimes just for their quirky nature and the fact that if you weren't on the ball, they would, let you know that you should have been concentrating a bit harder. They've all been fabulous. They've all been different. I must admit I lost a mare about 15 years ago that I thought was going to, she was just beautiful. She was really quirky on the ground. But once you were on her back, she would just go wherever you pointed her. She wouldn't question you. But she was really tricky on the ground, and I've had another one that was really perfect on the ground and really tricky to ride. It just sometimes is weird like that some will have these weird traits that don't transfer into when you're on them, and the other times they do. I find genetics in horses is quite interesting, that I'd bred 3 foals out of the same mare, and she was always a mare that scrambled in the float. And these 3 foals never, ever travelled with her. None of them ever travelled with her as a mare, and they all scrambled in the float. And I find that really interesting, that some traits can genetically be passed on, to their offspring, which is quite an interesting thing for me. I find that really
that's
quite
certainly
quirky.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
What was her name, the one that you said was quirky on the ground?
Her show name was High Pine Prophecy.
Yep.
Because she was she was a thoroughbred man. She was by a stallion called Canonize. So that's how she ended up with Prophecy. I try and get quirky names, and there's always a reason for my horses' names. There's always a bit of a story as to why I called them what I did. But she was just beautiful, and I'd showed her for a couple of years, and one morning I got up and she was displaying all the symptoms of colic, and the vet that I eventually ended up working, I called him straight away, and he came out and he did a rectal examination on her, and he looked at me and he said, "Andrea, she's got a twist, her spleen is on the wrong side."
Oh, no. But
he had given her pain relief and she'd started to graze, and he said, "Look, this is not normal. She shouldn't really be, this pain relief shouldn't really make this better this quickly." He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Can you do anything?" And he said, "All I can do is give you pain relief and hope it goes back." But he said, "I'm really, doubtful." So I put her in the float and I drove the 5 hours to Werribee, and they did surgery, and the vet said to me before he went to surgery, he said, "I'm telling you that the signs are not good." And he said, "I'm telling you, if I get in there and any of this bowel is compromised, I will not continue." He said, "I have seen when the owners have forced me to continue, and it has ended up that I've had to put the horse down in 10 days. He said, "If you are prepared that if I go in there and I make the call that we are not going ahead, you have to deal with that."
Mm.
And I said, "Yep, that's fine, go ahead." Anyway, we put it down on the table, and it broke my heart because I came home with an empty float.
Oh,
but,
no.
that's horses. They just were, God badly designed their gut,
yes.
unfortunately.
Yes.
And she'd enveloped her cecum, which is nearly unheard of. How she did it, they don't know. Why she did it, they couldn't give me any answers. They just said It's something that happens. They'd seen only ever 3 or 2 prior to her. One had been a foal, and one had been I think a pony foal, and one had been a Clyde, an older gelding that had done it. They totally unrelated, had no idea why, and virtually they said you couldn't do it if you tried to do it. So just one of those freaky things.
What about thinking of your proudest moments, Andrea? What's been your proudest moment with horses?
Oh, look, sometimes my proudest moments are not when I've been riding, but seeing my students do well. That's wonderful. I think probably for a riding point of view, the Memorial Eunice Cutting Thoroughbred Trophy at Adelaide Royal was, very much up there. Going Supreme Show Hunter at Penola Show last year was a huge high. I absolutely love it. There's many highs. I couldn't really pinpoint one. Each horse has given me such a wonderful memory of something, whether it was winning something or doing something that they made me laugh or, but watching my students go out there and do really well, that's a buzz nearly on a weekly basis. So that's fantastic and keeps me interested.
Yeah. Thinking about, for people who'd like to get into the industry to become an equine specialist vet, what do you think the biggest challenges are for them?
Oh, look, horses are quirky, they're tricky. The challenges would be probably the owners want you to know exactly what's wrong and to treat it in the cheapest possible way because horse people are always a bit, don't want to spend that much on it. And I think nearly for a vet nurse and a vet to build a relationship with your clients where they trust you and they know that their interests are at the top of your list sometimes can be the hardest thing to do. And that you're going to do the very best for them. You will go beyond to do the best for them. I think that is the most important, quality, that those people know that you go into bat for them no matter what the hardship. And I think that's, building that relationship with the clientele and being interested in what they do, asking them what they do, even if you're not interested in novelties or harness racing or barrel racing, if that's that person's passion, then make it important for you to find out what they do, because you'll often get a lot more information from people if they feel that you are interested in them, and the information from your owners is going to be, nearly sometimes 50% of treating the animal that's in front of you.
Yep. Okay. Now, thinking about people that will bring their horse to the vet, we can talk about common problems, but common problems with the horse, but common problems of the people that are bringing. I don't know if it's lack of knowledge or not able to handle the horse, or maybe it's that you touched on it early that they, want to tell the vet. I suppose that's the more experienced ones would say to the vet, I don't think my horse will cope well with that. But thinking about the more novice people with horses, what's something that they could learn if they were listening to the interview and they can take with them? Yeah.
Definitely the novice people are often the parents who have purchased a pony for the child who's interested in riding and have really had no prior horse knowledge or had anything to do with them. It's a huge challenge for non-horsey parents to suddenly become parents that now are horsey parents and have to deal with a pony that, I've never had anything to do with. A lot of the common things, especially with us, ponies, spring and the fact that people will think it's, geez, this is great, it's cheap to feed him, I don't have to feed him anything, he can just go out there on the grass all day. Of course, ponies founder, then sugar content in the grass, and they need to be locked up. That is really tough for people because all of a sudden they've got a paddock and a pony and they don't have to feed it and they think that's wonderful. They have to build yards and then they have to start to feed it, and then there's additional farrier work and there's additional drugs to try and keep this pony out of pain. So that is very common with the novice horse person.
Yes.
The laminitic side of things. But you'll often get ponies or horses as well that have an eye injury that people think, that eye's a bit cloudy, but it'll clear up. Eye injuries are incredibly difficult to treat. Treating horses' eyes is incredibly difficult to treat. It needs to be an octopus. You need to be jamming that eye open, sticking ointment in it, holding its head still.
Yes.
It is one of the challenges, and even as a horsey person, you would find it difficult for a non-horsey person to try and treat a pony's eye 3 times a day with ulcer ointment is near impossible. It is a really tricky thing. And, the bills for that, if people don't treat it straight away, they'll often have to end up paying the vet to go out 3 times a day to put the ointment in. And in worst case scenario, sedating the thing. So keeping your horse's eyes as healthy as possible is really important. Fly veils over summer, really important. Just the fact that low branches on trees, things that novice people would never think about, that, he's got a treaty shelter on. Well, there's some branches there that if he throws his head up, he's going to jam it in his eye, or I've seen horses with branches through the fronts of their sinuses.
Oh, gee.
So it's just, I guess, as a horse person, you would look at where you're going to put the horse and know Murphy's Law, that if there's something it can get stuck in, it'll get stuck in. Whereas a novice person, okay, we've got a 7-strand wire fence and 2 of those are barbed. Cows have been in here. That's all good. There's bushes in the corner. It's just that type of thing. We're all terribly cautious owning horses as to where we put them. What will they wreck?
Yes.
What can they rip their rugs on? So that's really tricky for a novice horse person, and often a novice horse person will buy the wrong horse because some educated horse person has done the wrong thing and sold them the wrong horse. So that is also very tricky.
Yes, it is.
If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com.
Have you got a book that you could recommend for the more novice horse owners?
Oh, look, books these days are a little bit of one of those things that I still have my books because I love them greatly. But any sort of general horse knowledge, I find the Pony Club manuals, some of the Pony Club manuals that are put out are fantastic general knowledge books, and I highly recommend any person that's got a child that's interested in riding, take them to Pony Club. As a parent, you'll have other parents that will help you out with those silly questions that you think, God, nobody's going to ask this question. Some owners, it's tricky putting a halter on, for goodness sake. They don't come with, nothing comes with instructions.
Yep.
The Pony Club manuals are super. They're just general knowledge, general health, temperature of a horse, heart rate of a horse, and most of the experienced equine community wouldn't be able to tell you what the temperature or the resting heart rate of your horse is. How to tell the difference between a healthy horse and an unhealthy horse. And when I say unhealthy, I don't mean a dying horse. I mean one that's a bit off colour. What are the signs? How can you tell if your pony's getting laminitis? Can you feel his feet? Does he look like he's foot sore? Is his stance unusual when he stands in the paddock? All those things. Novice people are going to have no idea. So Pony Club's a wonderful institution for the certificate work that they do through their manuals, but also just you're mixing with other horsey people, and that's how you're going to gain a lot of your knowledge, really.
I think that's good.
I can't recommend Pony Club enough.
Enough, yep. Tell me what you're looking forward to now.
Well, I've got, I'm still competing on my warm blood thoroughbred cross mare that's I've currently in work. She is a show horse in the show, well, a show hunter, I should say, in the show season, and she is a dressage horse in the non-show season. So she's in the middle of her sort of our dressage season at the moment. I'm looking to find her a husband for the end of this year. So she will be campaigned after that, probably to the middle of next year. And then we'll have babies for me. But I've just had a lovely 2.5-year-old that I bred out of a lovely thoroughbred mare by a wonderfully performing warm blood horse called Contender. And his stock is doing exceptionally well. Shane Rose is actually riding a horse called Swiper, who is by the same stallion as my 2.5-year-old. And he is going to be my next project. He's just come back from the breakers and he looks super. I've had 3 rides on him so far, and it's all going well, and I'm just loving his attitude and, get on with it deal. So that's wonderful. My mare can be a little bit of a girl at times, and sometimes she can be the girl with the curl at times, which she's a little bit, I've read the horoscope today and I'm not having a good day. So she can be a little bit tricky, but wonderful. She has many positive points, but sometimes her willingness can be questionable.
Okay. I was going to ask you, what are you doing, when she's in foals, especially in late stages or when the foal's born, but it sounds like you've got it all worked out with this Contender foal.
Yes, well, I've got him and I've got a full brother to him, which bizarrely is a red one. The second one's a red one. The first one's, the 2.5-year-old is brown with 4 white socks and a star. And I think most of Contender's 2015, I think it was, they were born. He was born, Robbie was born. We're all brown with white stars and 4 white socks.
Wow.
In 2016, they're all red with white stockings and blazers, so that's really interesting. But apparently Contender's dam line is red and white, so we've got a fair bit of bling on the yearling, and he's just as nice as well. In fact, I think he'll probably be bigger than the 2.5-year-old. He's quite a big boy, so I've got those 2 lovely boys coming on. So, and then when I choose Rosie's husband, that'll be a bit exciting. The trouble is, it's a bit like going to a fancy restaurant with a very extensive menu. Stallions these days, it's a bit hard to know what to pick.
There's some nice ones around. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. Yeah.
Andrea, just in a few sentences, would you be able to summarise your philosophy with horses? Just put it all together, sort of, just to finish off.
I guess my philosophy is to be prepared for the unexpected with horses always. They will break your heart. And I guess my philosophy as a coach, riding is all about feel, and sometimes you can read what you should be doing, but sometimes someone could help you try and trigger the feeling aspect of it. And always remember that how a rider can influence a horse, and that a rider should make a horse's natural gaits better, not hinder their natural way of going. So, as a coach, that's definitely my philosophy, to make my riders feel how they can influence the way their horses are going by sitting differently or applying the aids differently. So that I find is a really interesting philosophy. And of course, when you've got an obedient horse, you've got a safe horse, and my rider's safety is the paramount thing for me.
Yep. Andrea, before we finish off as well, what about people contacting you? How can they contact you? We'll have your details on horsechats.com/Andrea Riedel-Carrison, but just in case, I'm actually just thinking about this. If someone does want to go to your page, if they go to horsechats.com, if they search for Andrea or search for Carrison or search for Riedel, which is Riedel. Yep.
It's a tricky one, that one, isn't it? I wish I was related to the Riedel glass.
Yeah, it might be easier just to search for Andrea, I think. Or just, Yeah. Anyway, tell us how people can contact you.
Well, I'm very IT now, not at all, but I do have a Facebook page, and my equestrian centre, High Pine Equestrian Centre, has a Facebook page, and there is contact details on there. But possibly my mobile number, which I'm happy to give you if you like, is the easiest contact base, but service is not great, so texting is probably by far the easiest way to get me, and obviously I'm a horse person, so I'm never near the landline unless I've pre-organised it. So my mobile is 0417 849 754, and please, if I don't answer it, it just means I'm coaching, and where I coach in my indoor arena, I do not have any service for calls, but I always answer my texts.
Okay, wonderful. Andrea, thank you for talking to us today. I've enjoyed your insights into the vet nursing side. I think that, it's giving people something a little bit different and a little bit of a different career path, although ultimately I suppose you're still coaching and riding and competing, but it's just something a little bit different and something for the more novices to be aware of as well. So I think that all that knowledge is good. Thanks for coming, and hopefully we'll get you back sometime soon to talk about some of these things in a bit more detail.
You're welcome, Glenys. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, bye. Now, if you're still there, you probably know that I'm absolutely passionate about education within the horse industry. That's why I host this podcast. My other venture is Online Horse College. Have a look now at onlinehorsecollege.com, and I'll see you over there.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.